The wind was cold that day in Winterfell, sharper than usual, like it carried a warning from the old gods themselves. Bran Stark sat near the weirwood tree in the godswood, his eyes closed, skin pale, and lips slightly open. His mind was far away, drifting through time like a bird in the sky. Since the fall from the tower, his dreams had become stronger. He could see the past clearly, not just in bits and flashes, but like he was really there. He had seen his father, Ned Stark, walking through the halls of Winterfell, holding baby Jon. He had seen his Aunt Lyanna crying in blood. And more than anything, he had seen King's Landing, the place where his father died, but today was different. Bran pushed deeper into the weirwood's power. His soul flew faster, stronger, until he found the moment he had searched for 100 times, the day Ned Stark knelt on the steps of Baelor's Sept, surrounded by thousands, with the sword of Ilyn Payne shining in the sun. He had tried before, screamed his father's name, cried for him to run, but nothing changed. Today, Bran wasn't just watching. He had learned something new from the three-eyed raven before the old man died. He could whisper. He could touch the mind, not fully control it, but give someone a thought, a feeling, a warning, just enough to shift fate, and Bran was ready to try. He flew into the body of a raven perched near the sept. Its heart beat fast, wild, but Bran calmed it. Then in a soft voice that wasn't really a voice, he whispered into Ned's ear, "Don't trust the Queen. Look to the boy with the golden hand." Ned blinked, just slightly, a flicker in his eyes. He looked to the side, where Jaime Lannister stood in armor, expression unreadable. Then his eyes found Cersei, holding Joffrey's hand like a true mother. And suddenly Ned Stark understood something. Bran didn't know exactly what, but he felt it. His father understood when Joffrey shouted, "Bring me his head!" Ned stood calmly, no fear on his face. He looked at the crowd, at his daughters crying, and then something changed. He yelled, "Wait!" Chaos burst in the air. The gold cloaks moved forward, but Ned lifted his voice louder. "There is truth yet hidden in the Red Keep. The Queen has lied, and I demand trial by the gods." Bran, still in the Raven, felt the air twist. This wasn't how it had happened before. He had changed something. He had broken the timeline. Suddenly pain shot through Bran's mind. His nose bled in the godswood back in Winterfell. He opened his eyes and gasped, heart pounding. He didn't know if it worked, not fully. He only knew something had changed. Maester Luwin ran toward him. "Bran, are you all right?" Bran stared up at the sky. The clouds had shifted. The wind had stilled. And deep in his chest, he felt it. Ned Stark was alive, but for how long? The crowd at Baelor's Sept didn't know how to react. One moment, they were ready to cheer or cry at Ned Stark's execution. The next, the so-called traitor was shouting about lies, trials, and the Queen's secrets. Cersei's face turned to stone. She looked at the High Septon, then at the crowd, and finally at Joffrey. The boy king looked confused, angry, and suddenly unsure. He stared at Ned like a scared child, not a king. "What is he talking about, Mother?" Joffrey asked, gripping the sword's handle on the throne's side. Cersei gave a tight smile, leaned in, and whispered, "He's buying time. Don't fall for it." But others were not so sure. Lord Varys raised an eyebrow. Littlefinger tilted his head, like a wolf sniffing danger, and Sir Barristan Selmy, always watching from the side, stepped forward slowly, hand on his sword hilt. "My lord," Sir Barristan said, his voice loud and clear, "Lord Stark has invoked his right to trial. It is by law of the realm. You must hear him." Joffrey hesitated. Bran, still watching through the Raven, was trembling with tension. His father stood tall now, not broken like before. But the court was divided. One wrong word, one wrong move, and everything could still fall apart. "Enough," Cersei said, stepping forward. "This man confessed his treason. There is no trial for someone who already admitted guilt." "I confessed under threat." Ned spoke clearly. "I did it for the safety of my daughters. The truth is, Joffrey Baratheon is no true heir. He is the child of incest. Born of Cersei and Jaime Lannister." Gasps ran through the crowd like lightning. Some nobles covered their mouths. Others looked at each other in horror. Cersei's mask cracked. "Lies!" Ned turned toward the crowd. "Ask Lord Stannis. Ask Jon Arryn's former squire. The truth is in the records. Black of hair, black of hair, black of—" "Kill him!" Joffrey screamed, red-faced. "Now!" But something was different. Sir Barristan raised his blade, not against Ned, but between him and the gold cloaks. "I will not let an honourable man die without a fair trial." The High Septon looked frightened but raised his hands. "Peace, let the gods decide." Cersei hissed like a viper. "Do something!" she shouted to the Hound, but the Hound didn't move. Even Sandor Clegane knew. Something had shifted in the air. Too many eyes, too many whispers, too much truth for one sword to silence. Bran watched, wide-eyed. Then chaos broke loose anyway. A gold cloak loyal to the Queen lunged toward Ned. Sir Barristan blocked him. Another guard tried to grab Arya. Yoren, the Night's Watch recruiter, pulled her back and disappeared into the crowd. Sansa screamed. Joffrey ran behind the Iron Throne, crying like a baby, and then, out of nowhere, Renly Baratheon arrived, with 50 of his men. "Stop," he shouted. "No blood in the Sept!" He rode to Ned's side. "Come with me, Lord Stark. You're under my protection now." Cersei looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth opened, then closed. Jaime wasn't there. He had ridden back west days ago. Tywin Lannister was still in the Riverlands. Fighting Robb. She had no army in the capital. She had power, but not today, and so Ned Stark left Baelor's Sept alive. Bran blinked, leaving the Raven's mind. He gasped and fell back, shaking in the godswood. Hodor rushed over and picked him up like a rag doll. "Bran, okay?" Hodor asked softly. I think I saved him," Bran whispered. "But I don't know what happens now." Back in King's Landing, Varys walked behind the Sept's pillars, whispering to himself. "Interesting," he said. "Very interesting." Littlefinger, on the other hand, was already making new plans. "Chaos," he said with a grin, "is back on the ladder." But no one had any idea why the future had changed. No one, except a crippled boy with eyes that had seen both past and present. And now had just touched the future. Bran Stark had saved his father, but the game was still being played, and the rules were no longer the same. The city of King's Landing didn't sleep that night. Word spread like wildfire. Eddard Stark was alive, and he had accused Queen Cersei of incest before the whole realm. Some said Renly Baratheon had declared him innocent. Others whispered that Ned had proof, real proof, that Joffrey wasn't the true king. The nobles locked their doors. The common folk whispered at markets. Spies ran in every direction, carrying letters on fast horses. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister was losing control. Her face was calm, but her fingers trembled as she poured wine. "He's going to destroy everything," she hissed, pacing before the fire. Ned Stark has always been a problem, but now he's a symbol. And worse, people are listening. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled in, pretending to be slow as usual. "My queen, perhaps we can reason with Lord Stark." "Reason?" Cersei snapped. "You want to reason with the man who just called me a liar and named my son a bastard? No, I want his head twice over." She turned to the corner of the room, where a shadow stood still and silent. "Find me, Littlefinger." The shadow bowed and left without a word. Meanwhile, Renly Baratheon had taken Ned to the Tower of the Hand, placing his own guards outside. "You're not safe here," Renly said. "But you've bought us time." Ned sat quietly, holding a letter from Varys in his hand. "My son marches south. Robb's bringing the North to war. I never wanted this." "Well, now we're all in it," Renly said. "You lit the fire, Lord Stark. Don't be surprised when the flames spread." "I told the truth." "Yes," Renly said. "But truth is only useful when you have swords to defend it." Outside the city, in the dark alleys near Flea Bottom, Varys met with a strange figure cloaked in black. "The timeline has shifted," the figure said. Varys narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "There are whispers in the weirwoods," the figure muttered. "The boy sees, and now the past is bending." Varys didn't understand fully, but he believed in signs. "So the boy changed something?" "Yes," the figure said. "And the world will bleed for it." Back in Winterfell, Bran sat in silence. His dreams were getting worse. He saw fire, wolves screaming, the Red Keep burning. and one image that shook him to his bones, a dragon over King's Landing, wings wide, fire pouring from its mouth. Maester Lewin tried to calm him. "Bran, dreams are just dreams." "No," Bran whispered. "These aren't just dreams. Something's coming." In King's Landing, Littlefinger finally arrived at the Queen's chamber, dressed in black as always. "You called, my Queen?" "I want you to fix this," Cersei snapped. "Ned Stark, the rumors, Renly, all of it." Littlefinger smiled, slow and oily. "Oh, I love a mess. So many cracks to slip through. Can you silence him?" Littlefinger poured himself wine, then said, "Killing Ned Stark now would make him a martyr. But discrediting him? Making him look mad? That's better." Cersei raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Littlefinger leaned closer. "Let's say Stark claims Joffrey isn't the king. Let's say he even shows proof. But what if we discover letters that say Stark was plotting with Stannis all along? Treason, jealousy, a hunger for the throne. And who would believe that?" Cersei asked. "Enough people to cause doubt," he said, grinning. "And in politics, doubt is more useful than truth." Later that night, Ned received a letter delivered by a frightened servant. He opened it carefully, expecting more threats or warnings. But instead, it was from Varys. "You've woken the beast. The Lannisters are planning something. They won't strike with swords, but with ink and lies. Protect your name. Protect your daughters. The capital is turning against you." Ned's hands tightened around the paper. He thought he had won. He thought he had pulled the blade away from his neck, but he was still surrounded by enemies. More dangerous now, because they smiled instead of stabbing. Up in the north, Bran saw the vision again, a raven flying over fire, and then a whisper in the wind. The price of saving one man is changing the fate of many. The next morning, King's Landing looked calm, but underneath, it was boiling like a pot left too long on fire. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. They say Ned Stark is working with Stannis. No, he wants the throne for himself. I heard he bewitched the king with northern magic. They say he's gone mad like the Mad King. And just like that, the story was no longer about Cersei or Joffrey. It was about Ned Stark, the traitor, the power-hungry lord, the cold Northman who couldn't handle the heat of the south. Inside the Tower of the Hand, Ned sat alone, reading letter after letter. Some warned him, some accused him, and one shocked him more than anything. It was from Sansa. "Father, I don't understand what's happening. Why are they calling you a traitor again? The Queen says you're trying to kill the king. Please come speak to her. She says you can fix everything. I don't know what to believe anymore." Ned felt the pain like a knife. His own daughter was being turned against him. He stood and called for his guard, but Renly entered before they could leave. "You need to leave the city," Renly said, serious this time. "Now. I'm not running. This isn't honor anymore, Stark. This is survival. Cersei is poisoning the court. Littlefinger's spreading lies about you faster than wildfire. Even the lords who supported you yesterday are whispering doubts. I have daughters here." Renly looked at him sadly. "Then you better pray the gods can protect them, because soon no one else will." But it was already too late. At midnight, gold cloaks loyal to Cersei stormed the tower. They didn't try to kill Ned, not yet. Instead, they took him and dragged him into the Red Keep's dark dungeons. Varys was already there, waiting like a ghost. "You were warned," he said softly. "I tried to stop the lie," Ned muttered. Varys knelt beside him. "And in doing so, you broke the game. The wheel doesn't like to be stopped, Lord Stark. You've confused the players. Now they're all reaching for daggers." Ned didn't answer. His heart was heavy. The truth had power, but lies moved quicker. Meanwhile, Littlefinger smiled from a high balcony, watching the torches below. He had done what he did best, create chaos. And from that chaos he planned to rise. If Ned Stark fell again, this time by shame not sword, the North would be weakened, and Littlefinger's influence would grow. But what he didn't know was that Bran was watching. That night, in the Godswood of Winterfell, Bran fell into a deeper trance than ever before. His mind flew not to the past, but forward into a vision of what might come next. He saw Ned in chains, He saw Robb riding into war again. He saw Catelyn screaming as a raven brought her dark news. He saw Sansa alone in a room with Joffrey crying. And worst of all, he saw Arya, with blood on her hands, hiding behind a mask. Bran's voice cracked in the vision. "No, this isn't how it's supposed to be." Then he heard it again, the whisper through the trees. "You saved one man, but the storm has shifted. Every action changes the web." Back in King's Landing, Cersei watched from her chambers as ravens were sent to every corner of the realm. Letters claiming Ned Stark's betrayal. Letters accusing the North of treason. Letters calling Robb Stark a rebel. She smiled bitterly. "He thought he could outplay me. He thought honor could win in a pit of snakes, but far away a man was listening." In Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon read the Raven from Ned Stark, the letter he had kept hidden all this time, the one revealing Joffrey's true parentage. And after weeks of silence, Stannis finally moved. "Prepare the fleet," he said coldly. "It's time the rightful king takes what's his." Back in the darkness of the dungeons, Ned heard the iron doors close behind him. Alone. No light. No help. And all he could think was, what had Bran done? The dungeons of the Red Keep were cold, damp, and smelled like death. Rats scurried in corners. Water dripped from the stone ceiling. Eddard Stark sat in the dark, his hands chained, and his head heavy with shame. He had escaped death once. But now, he wasn't sure it had made a difference. In the silence, his thoughts kept drifting to Sansa, to Arya, to Robb. He could almost hear Catelyn's voice, soft and strong, telling him to come home. But there was no home anymore, only war. Then the door creaked open. A single torch lit the tunnel. It was Varys again. "I warned you, my lord," he said gently. "I listened," Ned said. "But the game is never fair, is it?" "No," Varys sighed. "Especially when the players cheat." Varys walked closer and crouched near him. "The Queen thinks you'll break, that you'll confess again. She plans to use you to make Robb surrender. She'll never break him," Ned whispered. "She doesn't need to," Varys said. "She only needs to trick the realm into believing she already has." Ned looked at him sharply. "Then what do I do?" Varys paused, then said quietly, "There may be one way, but it means becoming what you hate, a liar." Ned stared at him, silent. Varys continued, "If you publicly confess treason again and beg mercy, she may send you to the wall. You'll live. You'll protect the realm. And maybe, just maybe, your children will survive." Ned's fists clenched. "And the truth dies." "No," Varys said. "The truth sleeps until it's strong enough to fight again." Back in Winterfell, Bran woke from another vision, screaming. Maester Luwin and Hodor ran to his side. His face was soaked with sweat. "I saw the wall," Bran whispered, "but it was broken. And white shadows were walking." Maester Luwin calmed him with warm water. "Just a dream, Bran." "No," Bran said. "It's all connected." "Father, the war." "The wall. If we lose now, everything falls." Luwin looked confused. "Lose what?" But Bran didn't answer. He already knew. The game had gotten bigger than kings and queens. It was about the living and the dead now. Back in King's Landing, Arya Stark was no longer hiding in fear. She had stayed hidden in the streets, watching, listening, surviving. But the moment she heard her father was imprisoned again, something inside her broke. The little girl died. What stood now was something sharper. She still had Needle, the thin blade Jon had given her. She made her way to the Sept of Baelor one night, hiding among shadows. She saw the statue of the gods, the place her father was nearly executed, and something else, a list slowly forming in her mind. Cersei, Joffrey, the Hound, Ilyn Payne, Littlefinger. She whispered their names like a prayer, or a curse, and somewhere in the darkness, a man in black robes watched her, Jaqen H'ghar. He smiled slightly. The girl had the gift of death. Back in the north, Robb Stark had crossed the neck with 20,000 men behind him. He had expected to face a lion, Tywin Lannister. But what he found was fire and madness. Lord Roose Bolton rode beside him. "Ravens from the twins, my lord. Walder Frey wants something before he lets us pass." Robb gritted his teeth. "Let me guess, a marriage." Your hand, Bolton nodded. To one of his daughters. Robb looked ahead at the foggy river. Then I'll marry whoever I must, because I'm not here to win love. I'm here to bring back my father. But as he said it, a second raven arrived. It was from Varys. Your father may yet live, but he is being used. Your war has already been declared, with or without your sword. Robb clenched the letter. If they want a war, they'll get one. Far across the sea, on the burning sands of Essos, Daenerys Targaryen felt a strange wind pass over her tent. The fire near her danced without a breeze. Her dragons hissed. Restless. Something has changed, she whispered. Ser Jorah nodded. The realm is turning on itself. Dany looked toward the stars, then let them burn. If the lions and wolves tear each other apart, the dragon will rise. And in the shadows of Winterfell, Bran whispered to the trees, I tried to fix it. I saved him. But now everything's worse. The leaves rustled back. You didn't fix fate. Bran Stark, you only delayed it. It rained in King's Landing. The sky was grey and angry, and thunder rolled like drums of war. In the dungeons below the Red Keep, Ned Stark sat with a heavy heart. He had made his decision. He would lie again for his daughters, for peace, even if it meant spitting on his own name. The guards came at dawn. Rough hands pulled him from the stone floor. His legs were weak. His beard had grown wild. He didn't look like the Warden of the North anymore. He looked like a man who had seen the truth and been crushed by it. Outside, the city gathered once more. Rain soaked their clothes, but they didn't move. Everyone wanted to hear what Ned Stark would say. Would he fight? Would he spit defiance? Or would he beg like a broken man? Sansa stood near the Queen, pale, eyes full of hope. Arya watched from the crowd, hidden in rags, hand on needle, ready to kill if needed. Bran, in Winterfell, sat near the heart tree, his eyes white, his mind watching from far away. As Ned was dragged to the steps of Baela's Sept once again, he lifted his eyes to the heavens. He didn't look at Joffrey. He didn't look at Cersei. He looked at his daughters. Then he spoke. I, Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, Lord of Winterfell. You confessed to treason, the crowd gasped. Even Arya's heart skipped. I plotted to take the throne. I lied about Joffrey's blood. I sought to destroy the peace of the realm. Sansa began to cry. Arya shook her head, confused and furious. No, she whispered. No, he didn't. Ned finished with the words he hated most. I begged the mercy of the king. Joffrey stood, puffed up with power. Cersei gave him a sharp look. The same look she gave before when she had planned to send Ned to the wall. But this time, Joffrey ignored her. My mother asks for mercy, Joffrey said. My council wants peace. He paused. But I am the king. And traitors don't deserve mercy. Cersei's face turned white. Varys stepped forward in shock. Sansa screamed, Bring me his head. Joffrey shouted, No! Sansa cried, falling to her knees, but it was too late. The crowd exploded into chaos. Arya ran forward, pushing through people, eyes wild, blade in hand. Yoren of the Night's Watch grabbed her just in time, pulling her back into the shadows. And there, before the same sept, just like in the original timeline, Ned Stark died, his blood mixed with the rain. His head fell to the ground as the crowd screamed and gasped and scattered. Only a few people smiled. Joffrey, like a boy playing king. Littlefinger, who always profited from chaos. Back in Winterfell, Bran jolted back to life, screaming, No! No, I saved him. I changed it. Mr. Lewin rushed to him. Bran, what's happening? I saved him. Bran whispered, tears streaming. He was supposed to live. I saw it, but now the godswood was silent. The trees offered no comfort. Bran had changed fate, but fate had taken back what was owed. Robb Stark got the raven the next night. His father was dead, murdered after begging for mercy. There was no trial, no honor, only a boy king with a sword and a kingdom built on fear. The North erupted in anger. Lords shouted in fury. Women wept. Men swore oaths of vengeance. Robb said nothing at first. He stared at the fire in his tent. His hand trembled slightly, then he stood. I will kill them all, he said. Rose Bolton watched him carefully. Then let the wolves howl, the northern lords cried. For winter is coming, and we bring the cold. Far away in the vale, Catelyn Stark fell to her knees when she heard the news. Her cries echoed through the halls. But when she stood again, her eyes were dry. "This is war now," she said. "Not for pride, not for land, but for justice." And Arya had changed forever. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She watched her father die, helpless in the rain. And something inside her snapped. That night, she whispered the names again, but this time her voice was steady. Cersei, Joffrey, Ilyn Payne, the Hound, Littlefinger. She didn't want justice anymore. She wanted vengeance. The world changed the day Eddard Stark's head fell. The people of the North felt it in their bones, like a cold wind that never left. At first there was silence. Then came the rage. In River Run, Robb Stark stood before his bannermen with his sword raised. "The Lannisters murdered my father after he bent the knee," he shouted. "There will be no peace with lions, only war." The hall echoed with cheers. Roose Bolton, standing still in the corner, said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. Great Jonumber roared, "The boy has the wolf's blood. Let's tear them apart." Robb didn't smile. Not even a flicker. He was no longer just the son of Ned Stark. He was the king in the North. The lords knelt one by one. "King in the North! King in the North! King in the North!" But power came with a price. Far south, Catelyn Stark sat in her room staring at her hands. She had cried all her tears. Now only steel remained inside her. She looked at Robb with sad eyes. "You have to be smarter than your father. You can't just fight for honor. You must fight to win." Robb nodded. "I will." That night a raven flew from River Run, not to King's Landing, but to the Vale, to her sister, Lisa Arryn. Catelyn wrote, "They took his head. Now we take their kingdom." Back in King's Landing, Joffrey sat on the Iron Throne like a boy playing king, laughing as Sansa was forced to look at her father's head on a spike. She collapsed. "I'll have her beaten if she cries again," Joffrey said, smiling. But Sansa, broken as she was, stood up slowly. "Maybe your head will be up there one day," she said quietly. The room fell silent. The Hound looked at her with something like pity. The others were too shocked to speak. Joffrey raised a hand, ready to strike her, but the Hound stepped between them. "She's just a girl." Joffrey glared, but he lowered his hand. Sansa didn't say another word, but inside something had changed in her too. She no longer dreamed of fairy tale kings. She now knew what monsters looked like, and wore crowns. Meanwhile, Arya Stark was on the run. Yoren had cut her hair short, dressed her as a boy, and given her a new name, Arry. They traveled north with a group of criminals and orphans. Arya didn't trust any of them. But she stayed quiet, always watching, every night before she slept. She whispered her list: Cersei, Joffrey, Ilyn Payne, the Hound, Littlefinger. And then one night, one of the criminals tried to take her sword needle. He laughed, saying, "That's not for little boys." Arya didn't laugh. She stabbed him once, twice, right in the neck. The others watched in horror. The man gurgled and dropped. She didn't cry. She just wiped the blood off needle and said, "It's mine." That was her first kill, and far beyond the seas. Daenerys Targaryen watched her dragons grow and heard whispers from Westeros. Robert Baratheon is dead. Eddard Stark too. "The realm is burning," she smiled. "Let them burn each other. When the ashes cool, we'll fly." Back in Winterfell, Bran Stark was different now. He rarely spoke. He spent hours near the weirwood tree, eyes white, mind flying through time. He had tried to save his father and failed. Now he saw too much. Futures full of fire, snow and death. He told Maester Luwin one night, "The real war isn't between kings. It's between the living and the dead." Luwin didn't understand. "Bran, you're dreaming again." "No," Bran whispered. "The wall is not strong enough. Winter is coming, and it would come sooner than anyone believed." In the cold forests near the neck, Jon Snow stood atop the wall, staring into the white horizon. He didn't know yet that his father was dead, but he felt it, deep inside, and when the raven finally came, Jon's rage burned quiet and hard. "Maybe I made the wrong choice," he whispered to Sam. "No," Sam said. "You made the right one. Your family needs you alive." Jon looked northward. I'll fight the war they don't even see coming. Snow began to fall early that year. Tiny flakes drifting across the north like white crows, bringing news of death. Robb Stark stood on the battlefield near the Trident, armor soaked in blood, sword heavy in his hand. He had just won his third victory against the Lannisters. Lord Tywin's forces had pulled back, for now, but Robb felt no joy, no pride. Only the ache of a son whose father had died begging for mercy. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ned's face. Calm, proud, and then gone. They called him the young wolf, and they sang songs of his victories. But Robb didn't care about songs. He cared about justice, and justice wasn't finished. That night he sat in his tent with his bannermen. The map before him was stained with wine and mud. We ride to Harrenhal next, Robb said. If Tywin hides there, we smoke him out. Rose Bolton nodded. And after? We take King's Landing. There was silence. Lord Karstark leaned forward. And then what, Your Grace? Do we put your crown on the Iron Throne? Robb stared at the map. I don't want their throne. I want my sisters back. And I want the lion's head mounted on a spike, the lords roared in approval. But in a corner of the room, Grey Wind, Robb's direwolf, growled low. He felt something. Something none of the men did. Far away, in the black heart of the woods, Bran Stark opened his eyes. He had seen it again. Not just war. The darkness beyond it. White shadows walking in snow. Eyes like cold blue stars. A storm that swallowed everything, even Winterfell, even the wall. He turned to Maester Luwin, pale and shaking. I need to go north. North. Bran, it's snowing already. What are you talking about? I saw it. The wall will fall. The dead will come. And no one is ready. But your brother is fighting a war. Bran closed his eyes. Then he's fighting the wrong war. Meanwhile, in the south, Sansa Stark played the game every day. She smiled for Joffrey. Every night she whispered in the dark, praying to the old gods for strength. She was learning now how to lie, how to listen, how to survive. The girl who once dreamed of princes was dead, and far from the capital, Guria was no longer a girl at all. The road had taught her more than any swordmaster. Pain, hunger, fear. She had killed more than once now, and each time it got easier. But then came the moment she wouldn't forget. In a roadside camp, a Lannister soldier joked about her father. He laughed, mimicking Ned's last words. Arya didn't hesitate. She stabbed him in the dark. But this time, she didn't stop after one. She kept stabbing until she couldn't recognize the man's face anymore. Jaqen H'ghar found her the next morning. Blood on her hands. You are learning, he said. But there is more. She looked up. I want to kill them all. Then come with me, he said. To Braavos. To become no one. Arya wiped the blood from her cheek. I'll become whoever I have to. As long as they all die, screaming. And across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen's dragons grew with fire in their breath. She stood before a crowd of freed slaves, shouting her name. Breaker of chains. Mother of dragons, but deep in her heart another name called to her, Targaryen, and that name belonged on a throne. Her ships were nearly ready. Her armies were growing. Let them fight over ashes, she said to Jorah. I'll rule what remains. Back at the wall, Jon Snow stood atop the icy ramparts, watching the forest. He had seen shadows moving beyond the trees, things that shouldn't exist, and then, one night, they came. Screams echoed from the far end of the watch. White walkers, tall, silent, cold as death, moved through the black like ghosts. Jon fought with fire and steel, but not all of his brothers survived. After the battle, he looked to the sky. We're not ready, he whispered, and far away. In a dream, Bran heard him, in the middle of a dark forest. Bran stood with the three-eyed raven, a voice he thought he would never hear again. You tried to change the past, the raven said. But the past holds its own power. I saved him, Bran whispered. I saved my father. You did, the raven said. And for that the future will bleed. Bran saw a vision then, of the Night King, of Jon Snow in battle, of dragons over Winterfell, of Barya standing in a hall of faces. He saw the long night, and he saw the price of every choice. Bran awoke with tears in his eyes. He looked to the sky. Winter was here, and it would not be merciful.